Hey, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us. I'm lucky enough to have Scott with me here from LawScan and really excited to have this is my first time running a Catalyit Fireside chat. So, Scott, if the room's too warm, just let me know. I'll make sure to turn that fire down. Don't want you to get uncomfortable or anything. But we
I
are
did, I
excited
did
to
bring my fireplace here, so we've got it right behind me.
Perfect, right? Yeah, I've got my TV going with the fireplace, just for the environment, or the ambiance. But no, definitely don't need a fireplace going at Texas today where it's 85. So at least we're cooled down a little bit. So Scott, I've been blabbering too much here in the intro already, but you are the founder of LawScan, and I want to give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself and LawScan, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Sure, no, I appreciate it. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. So most people who know me, I've been in the insurtech business for, 14, 16 years now, with my first software company being Logic, which we sold to Zywave, 4 years ago, I think it was at this point. We started LawScan. LawScan is essentially a tool that's used by agents, brokers, carriers, MGAs, MGUs, analysts, so forth, so on, to really kind of solve the problem of extracting data from loss runs. These loss runs are so complex. Every single one is completely unique and different, and we've been able to solve this problem to extract data perfectly off of any loss run. There's a lot of use cases behind it, but that's essentially what our primary goal is, to do that and then generate extractions of loss summary reports and there's just the straight data as well. So.
So to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. So if I'm running an insurance agency, we've got a strong commercial arm, and I'm going to hear what would I hear from my producers, or what would I be experiencing as a producer, perhaps specifically that I could say, oh, you know what? We need to check out loss run. We've been dealing with this for long enough time. Like we need a solution.
Yeah, so I guess the primary. There's actually many use cases within the broker world. One of the primary use cases is actually on the back end with the CSRs. Right now, what happens is on a commercial side, you get multiple loss runs that you need to actually run through the process of extracting the information, which is usually a manual process, either flipping through the pages and adding everything up to come up with loss summary reports. Loss summary reports are very important for filling out a court application. So it doesn't matter the line of business, whether it be workers' compensation, auto, GL, you name it, you have to fill out these court applications and come up with the summaries of the data. So we can do that in a matter of seconds. You can import multiple loss runs, combine them together, break them out by line of business, and instantly generate these loss summary reports. So that's kind of, from a CSR standpoint, the first use case. The second use case for them is really taking that full data dump of all the information, all the individualized claims, so that they can either analyze them or organize them in a way to where it becomes useful for the producer. On the producer side, producers really like to get information and organize it in a way that they can present it to their clients. So we have the capability of taking all this data and essentially regenerating brand new loss runs. But these loss runs don't all look different. It's now taking all the claims information, organizing that data by whatever you want to organize it, like by the largest claim first, and then showing all that data, all the way down. Because producers, when they're talking to their clients, they don't want to have to flip through the pages. They don't want to highlight the ones that are important. They want to be able to talk about which ones are the most important, which is usually the larger or the open claims and so forth, so on. So those are a couple of the use cases, but there are multiple others, as well as analytics that we certainly are working on as well. So.
Gotcha. So I'm familiar with a number of commercial agents and leading and working with their clients and their prospects on their mods. Would LawScan and the data that comes out of LawScan be a benefit to those agents that are leading with that mod factor on work comp?
Most definitely in a way. Keep in mind, so my prior company was Logic, and we did experience mods, and that was what we did. And I had an opportunity to rebuild ModMaster. Really conceptually, this idea came from that exact use case, which was we want to analyze and predict future experience mods. But in order for us to do that, we need the claims data to do so. So we technically can live in the back end of those other software entities who actually do those mod calculations that are out there, so that they can fulfill exactly that need. Because it is important to do those future projections and figure out, okay, well, what is my mod going to look like with my claims that are living here that haven't hit my mod worksheet yet? Well, we need the claims information off the loss run. I've got to manually enter this, or you can import everything into our system, do a data dump, import it into other systems, and then essentially do those generations of experience mod future projections in the future to get exact, or at least good predictable measures of what can affect your experience mod as you're looking forward for the coming years. So
Sure.
absolutely, it's a very important key factor of that.
Okay, awesome. You mentioned in that last little bit there about coming up with the idea for loss scan. So if we could dive a little deeper into that, I always think that's super interesting when we can talk to somebody who's come up with an idea, built a company or two, and really focus on maybe like the light bulb moment. So if you can kind of take us back in time, when was your light bulb moment? How did it hit? And then how did we get here?
Well, I think it's loss runs and the ability to get the data off, has always kind of been out there. It's always been something that was approached to me by many different brokers way back in the day when I first started my first company. And they always said, hey, we know you can get data off of experience mod worksheets, but what about loss runs? And it was kind of like, yeah, that's just not a feasible, objective of ours. It's going to be too time consuming. It's literally a completely different company if we're going to do that. And obviously we never went down that road. So, it's just been out there as a need. And we also knew that there were others that were trying to solve the problem that were struggling to solve it. And, we kind of think a little bit differently about how to solve a problem with technology. And I think that makes us, kind of a powerful force out there to be able to develop something. But also, you have to keep in mind that I was also a producer. I was a producer for 26 years. Technically, I still hold my license. I'm trying to decide if I still want it or not. But essentially, at this point in time, or at that point in time, as a producer, being out there on the commercial side, and most of my clients were car dealerships. I knew, my processes as a producer. I knew what I needed to do, what I did on a daily basis. So not just hearing about it from the standpoint of, hey, can this help me generate, experience mods or whatever? It's really built around the idea of like, this needs to be something that's used by producers to help them produce, right? A lot of software companies, they don't really necessarily focus on that. So the light bulb idea really came from my own personal use cases that I had and I needed to be able to better educate my clients and give them the data that they can see right in front of them, which sometimes is hard. Yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
So, speaking of, what's coming now in the future, so we've kind of talked about the past a little bit. I understand that, one of the objectives today is kind of talk about the rebrand. So can you tell us a little bit about the rebrand and what brought that about?
Yeah, absolutely. So loss scan is pretty straightforward on what it actually does. We deal with loss runs, extracting data from them, so forth, so on. But it really doesn't capture what our overall goal is. So we are rebranding the company, or I should say, loss scan will always exist as a product. However, we are developing, or we already have developed, our new brand name behind us, which is Deep Vector. Deep Vector really helps us describe who we are as a company and what we're doing in the future. And what I mean by that is when we started building out our algorithm and our machine learning capabilities in the back end, we kind of looked at it as a brain. It's just sitting there and it has capabilities to do things that are absolutely phenomenal that nobody else has been able to do. So when you think about this little brain that's there, loss scan kind of taps into it, and it has this purpose that lives and runs in the insurance industry to solve a very specific problem. But as we've grown, and the more and more companies and people we talk to, we start to hear about, well, what about the healthcare industry? We have needs over here to be able to do that. Can you extract data from these types of documents? We've heard from the government, hey, can you do things over here where you can extract data for us in these different, instances? We've had other software companies who have approached us and asked us to be the back end for them to be able to solve this problem because it's too expensive and time consuming to maintain and do the things that we do on their side. So Deep Vector really helps us describe the fact that we are truly a company that can expand in many different industries, many different document types, and gives us those capabilities for that expansion in the future. We're still hyper focused on the insurance industry and on loss runs as our primary focus at this point in time, but we truly had to come up with a new brand name in order to give us those capabilities in the future. So that's why we're changing everything over to Deep Vector in the future. But again, that loss scan product will always live there.
So then, in short, would the rebrand or the reorganization rebrand, does that affect anybody who's currently making use of LawScan now?
Absolutely not. It's zero effect on anybody. All it is essentially just kind of a name change. If anything, all it means is they might get a new T-shirt from us that doesn't necessarily say Lost Scan. It might say Deep Vector on it instead. So that's aside from that, truly no real physical change to the company, the capabilities, to what they're doing. Their bills will start coming from Deep Vector rather than from Lost Scan. So obviously, that would be the only net effect to our customers, but otherwise, absolutely not.
Gotcha. Okay. So if we could take a DeLorean 5 years into the future, um, what kind of goals are you setting for Deep Vector, and what would we expect or hope to see in 5 years from Deep Vector?
Well, 5 years is a good question. Deep Vector itself, I think within the next 5 years, we will definitely see an expansion of other products, that live under the brand. As far as in the insurance industry, we already have a very powerful roadmap to bring more capabilities for our clients for evaluating the data that they're getting off of the loss runs. So instant analytics is going to become a very big thing for us to be able to provide that for our customers. The capability of importing other different types of documents that may be necessary for them to solve problems. And right now, to be quite honest with you, I mean, we already are extracting data from certain Accord applications like certificates of insurance, IFTA reports, MVRs, and so forth, so on. We're really dealing with this on a case-by-case basis. For those who need it, they'll come to us and ask. If they're already an existing company, then we can simply go ahead and maneuver over and provide those capabilities in literally a matter of sometimes hours, but usually no more than a couple days. We can adopt any new type of document with our capabilities in the back end, so which is pretty cool. So I think, 5 years from now, you're going to see a much more robust company with a lot more capabilities. Really, that's going to entrench into the insurance industry on the back end for others, as well as expand, not shouldn't expand, but, grow our capabilities with some of our other users like carriers and MGAs and MGUs, to where their capabilities and needs can be fulfilled by our organization.
Sure. Okay. So if it's okay, I'd like to pivot a little bit and maybe move away from LawScan and Deep Vector specifically, and instead, since you have such a wealth of knowledge and experience in the technology space and the insurance space, I've done a lot of traveling lately to some state events, and I'm used to swimming in a certain pond where I can say certain words or I can maybe reference certain vendors, and everyone in that space knows what I'm talking about. And now I've been swimming in other ponds where sometimes those assumptions are not correct. And I'm talking to these agency owners and they're like, hey, like I'm really not using AI, or I'm really not leveraging automation at all right now. So if you were in front of agents that maybe fit in that pond and they're trying to get started with technology, trying to get started with AI, what kind of advice do you think you might have for an agency owner who is recognizing the fact that technology is moving extremely quickly and maybe they haven't started yet migrating their agency toward some kind of robotic automation processing or AI tools, what would you tell them, or what advice might you give them in how to get started and how to get comfortable with it?
Don't get overly dependent, would be my number one. AI is pretty cool. I mean, I use it, on a daily basis myself for doing very specific tasks. And it's great when it comes to those specific tasks. I would say that, before you jump into technology, make sure that that technology isn't 100% dependent on AI. In other words, the platform should truly be built around a very specific purpose and capabilities, but use a sprinkle of AI in the back end to basically enhance those capabilities. So, in other words, a great example is in our case, on our front end, we don't use any AI. There's LLM models out there that are available. They're only 80% accurate, which requires a massive amount of human capital in the back end to fill in all the problems that you get with that AI. AI is not perfect. It's a question. I don't know if you saw those pictures, but how many fingers do I have, right? And it's got like eight
Right.
fingers, and you just never know. And it can do anything. But if you become overly reliant on it, at the same time, it could potentially cause you problems. AI is growing so fast and so furiously in the marketplace that I kind of feel like you need to be, cautious as you move forward. Walk slowly because AI is going to improve, substantially for what we see today into down the road. Even a year or 2 years down the road, it's going to be completely different. The capability is going to be different. So don't just jump right in. Really evaluate what the capabilities are, evaluate how these companies are using AI on the front end versus the back end, and really just it could slow down. Everybody kind of feels like they have to have the words AI or they're not really worth anything, right? And just getting back from ITC and going through the show and seeing every single booth had the word AI in it. I don't think I saw one that didn't have the word AI in it. And I find it very interesting and funny in a sense because it's like, well, are you just putting that there because you need to have it there because you're afraid somebody's not going to approach your booth unless you have it? I say you approach the booth if you don't have it. I think it's better to really, think about the core services of what you need, and then figure out how that AI really is going to help you utilize those services outside of requiring it to run those services, because I think those are the ones that are going to be, questionable in the future.
Sure. Okay. So speaking of the future, what did you see at ITC? What did you learn at ITC that you think might be something that agents really should be paying attention to or aware of that's coming sooner rather than later, in case they were not at ITC, like I wasn't at ITC. So I'd be curious to hear what you have to say.
I was just quite honestly, I was blown away by the number of companies that are focusing on some very specific areas that are out there that need to be addressed. And they aren't necessarily just for brokers, could be more for carriers and so forth, so on. I would say that, I walked away from ITC with blisters on my toes. I walked 8 miles a day, complete exhaustion. But I came away with a great feeling of what we're doing as a company is really following the right direction, and we're accomplishing our goals. And I feel like, there's just a lot of creativity that's out there. There's a lot of companies that are trying to put so much together into a single bubble that sometimes isn't always the best thing to do. I think the companies that you really should focus on that are ones that are really trying to solve a specific problem or a process, right? Not the ones who are necessarily like trying to pull all the bits and pieces together and bundle into one and then forget about what they were doing over here, over here, or over here. The ones that really focus on a very specific thing are the ones who actually succeed or are providing a value proposition to solve problems. And you can pick and choose and kind of put them together like a puzzle piece to really fit your needs rather than committing to one thing that's going to supposedly solve everything, because you can't do that. There's too many of the cool little technologies that's sitting over here or sitting over here that you can take together and put together with others. And so I say, yeah, taking away from ITC is there's a lot of cool little companies that are doing some neat things. There's a lot of new startups that are coming up that are pretty neat, trying to solve those little problems. So yeah, that's what my takeaway from ITC.
Gotcha. Do you think over time we would maybe see or experience consolidation of those smaller, not smaller, but like very specific solutions, and then see somebody kind of try to push them together into one larger solution?
Sure. Well, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what you see a lot out there is you see a lot of these companies, acquire different companies to help enhance their product, which, that happens. That's what happened to me. My old company, it solved a specific problem and we were acquired to help, solve a specific problem of theirs in their greater solution, right? So I think you're always going to see that consolidation take place. I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think it's a more a question of, as that process takes place and we move forward, with some of these companies, every single time one goes away, there's another one that always usually steps right in its place, because ideas are great, fulfillment is a big thing. And, sometimes with those acquisitions, you really lose the flavor of a company or a product that's out there. And, but that's never going to end. I mean, that's just part of the process of life and business. So.
Totally get it. Well, that's all the questions I had for you, Scott. Is there anything we didn't cover that you would like us to redirect to?
No, I don't, I appreciate the time here with you and honestly, I think you guys are doing a great job and helping companies like myself and brokers really understand the products and services that are out there. So keep doing a great job doing what you guys are doing. From just a personal standpoint, yeah, but when you're talking to brokers, don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to look at these different things. There's so many opportunities to grow as a producer. There's so many opportunities to grow as a brokerage. And if you're not embracing technology, you will fall behind. There's no question about it. Just be selective when you embrace, just make sure that you're making the right choices. We're kind of like a no pressure company. We want people to come to us and solve the problem and be happy with it and see the solution actually does work extremely well, saves them time, saves them money. And if we're able to do that or others are able to do that and it helps solve their problem, embrace it, go after it. So.
Awesome. I think that's great, great advice. And I appreciate the kind words. We're trying to improve what we do every day, trying to make sure that we're getting, people in touch with solution providers that can solve pain points that we know and trust, and LawScan and now Deep Vector definitely fall into that family category. And so we appreciate the partnership with you, and we look forward to a lot more of these fireside chats, maybe an in-person one in a couple of weeks when we're both in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. And next time I'll flip on the fire. We'll actually have a real fireside behind us.
Okay, sounds great. Well,
All
thanks,
right,
Scott. I
buddy.
really appreciate your time, and I'm excited to see what happens with LawScan and Deep Vector in the near future.
Sounds great. Thanks again.